Okay, I think I'm going to suggest that we stop there and we go through these examples. I realise that you probably won't have finished both of them, but it'd be good for us to talk about them and then we can just wrap up on the whole 2 days. Okay, so first of all, we've got our scenario number 1. So this is our asthma drug Salamol, and we want to know if it's associated with Alzheimer's disease. And so what study design, so you've got this idea that you're going to do a prospective study. So this happens in pharmacoepidemiology. It tends to be more expensive, but it turns out you've got enough funds to recruit 5,000 people over a 10-year period, and that you can collect lots of information on confounders on those individuals. This is something that we often can't do in electronic health records research, but can be really important. So it's an example where we've got this kind of initial idea where we're going to collect information on people ourselves. So what study design did people decide to do?
Randomized control trial.
You're doing a randomized control trial. Okay, I'm going to tell you that you haven't got that much funding. So we're not going to do a trial. But I mean, in theory, you could. It would be very expensive. What could there be? There could be a problem with doing a randomized trial as well. What might the problem be?
Maybe the scaffold, because this drug can increase the Alzheimer's disease. Each trial IRB may not approve this trial.
Yeah, so it may not be ethical to do a randomized trial, but you did. So what was it you decided to do? So you're doing a 10-year cohort study, okay. So where were you going to find your exposed people? This is for either groups. Where are you getting your patients from?
We are getting ours from GPs.
You're getting yours?
Physicians,
Yeah.
clinics, hospitals, and insurance company.
Yeah, so I like this idea of finding them within the GPs. What would be good about finding them at the GP?
Good health record, and it's good for conducting cohort study because we are able to follow up.
Yeah. Another reason it's good is because they're from the general population, so it means that you're getting potentially a good sample from the general population. Yeah. Where were you going to find your patients?
Over 65 years and with asthma.
So over 65 and with asthma, but where would you find them? You didn't talk about where you'd find them? Yeah, okay, so it's an important thing about where, so I can see who my population is, and then I also have to find them. So your idea of the GPs is good. I liked your idea, so why are you choosing people aged over 65?
Because our interest is the risk of developing asthma disease. So if we choose some that younger, for example, 20 years old, then it is difficult to find our interest within this 5,000 participants.
Yeah. So we need to find people who've got some chance of developing Alzheimer's over the 10-year period. So if we pick people who are 20, we've wasted our money. Okay, good. So who are you having as your unexposed population?
Like people who have asthma but who are not using Salamol.
Yeah, so you've got people with asthma, yeah, so we know that they're otherwise potentially similar to the group taking Salamol, but not taking that treatment. Any other?
Patients using other drugs.
Yeah. So you may want to make sure that they've got maybe a similar level of asthma to the people taking Salamol. Great. Okay, so what might be problems following people up for 10 years? Do you think it's easy to do that?
No, people might die, might move.
Yeah.
They may have like severe Alzheimer's and they are not able to.
Ah, that's a really good point. So maybe we're going to lose people, and maybe we're losing the people who are having the outcome. That's a big problem. Yeah. What might we do to try to avoid that problem?
One solution is competing risk model with the survival analysis or Cox model. So, for example, this where other outcomes should be treated as competing outcome.
Yeah, potentially, but I'm still worried that the people with Alzheimer's we're just going to lose altogether. And I want to know if they've got Alzheimer's. Anything? I know we talked about this in your group. One thing that you can do, and there are some good examples of this, are you can go and recruit these patients and then collect all this really important information on confounders that you need, which you may not otherwise get. But it's possible that you could then follow them up through their electronic health record. So there are examples of this, for example, in rheumatoid arthritis, where to study the new treatments for that disease, people have collected lots of detailed information on patients. But then the long-term follow-up, what they really care about is, will these patients get cancer and will they die? And that follow-up can come through the electronic health record. So it may not be important that we don't need to personally keep in touch with the patients, but they can be followed up through their record, and that can be a great way of keeping them involved. Okay. Anything else that you wanted to say about this example? Okay, well, while you can come back to it if you like, but so scenario 2, I think you maybe had less time to spend on. So this is a new antidepressant, funtoxamine, and it's been launched in the US for 5 years, but it's been linked to a possible increase of mortality from spontaneous reporting. So remember, this is a signal. You've been given access to a database of insurance claims in the States with about 5 million US citizens aged 20 to 65, and you've got some information on prescribing, comorbidities, a few bits of information on smoking, drinking, BMI, and death is well recorded, but not the precise cause. So what study design would you do?
Retrospective case control.
You're doing a case control?
Retrospective cohort study.
You're doing a prospective cohort. So why the two designs? So why would you do a case control?
Kind of compare who's taking other antidepressants, compare the mortality within the population, who's taking fundoactin, compare the mortality rate in different groups.
So you're doing it nested amongst people who've been exposed to antidepressants?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay, that would be.
Also, there's no ethical issues when it's retrospective.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's no. Yeah, I agree. There's no ethical issues, and you could do a case control study. Yeah. And why would you do a cohort?
First, we discussed the availability of self-control design. However, so neither cases or case crossover was available because the exposure is not short time.
Yeah.
And the outcome is there, and the period after outcome is not available, so neither are available. So
so I agree. So the death is a problem. The exposure being potentially long is not a problem. So it's as long as we can define when the exposure is, it doesn't matter that it could be long. But the death would be a problem. Yeah.
And the next choice was because when we use the electronic health record, we can track so many patients. So the retrospective cohort study seems attractive.
Yeah.
And also there's said that there are limited sales of this new drug, so we want to use all of the data for this drug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I think either design would work. I think that there are things that you would need to consider differently. And one thing that you would think shouldn't be a major consideration, but You're going to do this study, you're going to write it up and then publish it in a paper. Now, I might want non-epidemiologists and clinicians to read my study, and typically they will more likely understand a cohort design than they will a case control design. There's nothing less valid about the design, but it may be easier to explain to non-experts in our field what we've done through a cohort than a case control. But it's a minor consideration, but it's something to think about. Okay, great. So how are we selecting a comparator? So you've nested it within a cohort of people who've taken an antidepressant, so we've kind of dealt with that, I think. But who are your controls?
Would be different, and it depends on their prescription, different kind of antidepressants.
Well, but your cases are going to be dead people. Yeah. So your controls will be.
Oh, I guess dead people.
Non-dead people, just non-dead people.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, non-dead people.
Yeah. Okay. And
would it be possible to compare like dead people caused by this kind of antidepressant and then dead people caused by other kind of antidepressant?
so within your group, you'd be able to look at the association with this antidepressant, other antidepressants. Yeah. Yeah. How about you guys? So who was your unexposed group?
You use other types of antidepressant
Okay.
in the same field.
Yeah. I like that. So other antidepressants. What could be the problems with that? So how might prescribing differ for the new drug and other antidepressants? This is going to be a problem for both designs, by the way. But what might be different in prescribing?
The severity of disease, of course,
Uh-huh. And how might that differ?
or drug cost. For example, if the newer drug is more strong or the more expensive or so on, so the patient characteristics may differ into groups.
Yeah. So this is a really important point about new treatments. They're often given to unusual patients, and so it could be that they're given to patients who failed on other treatments or who have particular severe disease that the clinician is worried won't do well on the old drugs. So, and we may need to think about this in terms of this study question. So maybe it's given to people who are at greater risk of suicide, for example, which is then going to affect our outcome potentially. It's just something for us to be aware of. And then, so how are you going to address confounding in your designs? So you're going to use propensity scores. Great. We just learned about them. That's good. And
We said multivariate.
yeah. So you're going to do multivariable. Yeah. Okay. And then the last two things. So first of all, what's the implication of not knowing everything about lifestyle factors?
It may increase the major confounding problem.
Yeah. So it means that we may have some unmeasured confounding still, which is always going to be a problem. And then the other big one is, why does it matter if we don't know the cause of death?
Because of suicide. Suicide, for example, if the
Uh-huh.
patient is severe depression and use this new antidepressant, maybe that is what we saw is this patient is maybe higher risk of the mortality, but in fact they just for the last stage they may choose suicide.
Yeah. So maybe it's partly suicide, and that could be. And it's possible that the drug is causing, so there are these problems with antidepressants. It could be that it's causing, but we won't know. The all-cause mortality is it's a strange outcome. In a way, it's very homogeneous because everybody's dead, but everybody dies from something different.
Yeah.
And if
It can be accidents.
yeah,
And not related to this drug at all.
yeah, exactly. And I think I mentioned the other day the example of proton pump inhibitors, and they've been linked with an increased risk of all-cause mortality. Well, with any drug, if they do increase the risk of death, then they do it through some mechanism, and they will only increase the risk of death through some causes, not all causes. So it's much better to have both a hypothesis about which causes of death we think may be increased, but also to have data which tells us what the cause of death was. Often people will do studies of all-cause mortality because they had no option. All they know is whether somebody died or not. But if we look at individual causes and we see an increased risk of lots of different individual causes, it makes me suspicious that the drug is a marker of just general ill health, and that people who are ill are taking that drug. Ill people are more likely to die from all sorts of things. So if you're interested in mortality, looking very carefully at specific causes is a really, really important way to see, is this a causal effect or is it just a marker of confounding where sicker people are taking this treatment? Okay. Are there any more comments or thoughts on these two examples? I've also got some handouts with suggested solutions here. As I hand these out, be careful when you take them because you need to take two sheets. There you go. So the scenario number 1 and scenario number 2 are on separate sheets of paper. Okay. And so is there anything that you wanted to ask or comment on from the 2 days that we've been together? Yes, so the PowerPoints are all available, yeah?
I can make these available in the drive.
Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All of the materials
Yes, I'll upload everything.
available, yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah. And it's been a real pleasure to spend the 2 days with you all. I've really enjoyed meeting you. You seem like you've got some really great ideas and great thoughts about the different things that we've been talking about. So I wish all of you very well in your research careers. And if you want to contact me for any reason, then please get my email address and you're very welcome to email me. But it's been a real pleasure meeting you all, so thank you very much. And thank you for the invitation to be here.